Right.
The ones next to you!
Right.
Now make your move!
All right, don't hustle me.
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to raving and ranting about board games, but usually more the ranting part. We'll get on with the show in just a minute, but my sponsor hasn't spoken in a while.
As gamers, we find it hard to deal with empty shelves, some worse than others. You therefore want a supplier that has what you need at affordable prices and delivers on time. For me, that supplier is Kiender. They offer a discount on bulk purchases as well as a point scheme for future acquisitions down the line. If there's a hot title you're after, chances are Kiender's got it. Wingspan? Mine. Arc Nova? Mine. Eclipse? Actually, I hate that game, it's terrible, but you might like it. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So board and dice make a return to my gaming table with Minos, Dawn of the Bronze Age. Thank you very much for the review copy. Designed by Stanislav Kodonsky, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, with a solo mode by David Turksey and Kakper. If you want to pronounce the guy's surname, it's at the bottom. By all means, David Turksey will give you $10 if you can pronounce it right. But this is a new 1 to 4 player heavy Euro game, and I am going to stress the fact that it's a heavy Euro game. I have heard people call this light medium.
Liar! Liar!
Enough. Alright, now, this is a new heavy game, and certainly it's heavy in weight as well, but it's another Euro game which borrows a mechanic from a game that I sold, but actually quite liked. I actually almost wanted to buy it again at Bring and Buy, and that's called Coimbra. Coimbra from Eggert Spiel had this really cool mechanic with dice that you drafted dice from a pool and used them to select cards with a kind of ascending numerical order mechanic that the order dictated like who could go first but also what choice you had. It was a cool little system, but it did have a little flaw. It did generate a lot of AP and certainly could create a lot of downtime. Well, Minos uses pretty much the same mechanic. You draft dice, you use them to grab cards, these cards can be played for special powers and points, and the idea is, well, as every Euro game, get the most victory points. What else do you need to know? So this one sort of just came out of nowhere. It just appeared at Essen. It certainly looks very colourful. It's going down that whole bright and beautiful thing like Windmill Valley, which is currently in the bag, packed for GridCon, where I'm doing a demo actually. So, you know, I'm glad that they are bringing more colour into the world, although I hear they're going to go back to the whole T-game series in the future. That's what they kind of want to do, so oh well, I mean, I was kind of done with the whole T-series, but hey, you know, maybe they can bring it back and do T-series 2.0 and make them as colourful as this. Then, you know, maybe I might actually get on board with them a little bit more. But for now, let's see how Minos does.
Yes! Get on with it!
So Minos is played over 4 rounds. After the second round, there's some interim scoring, and then after the 4th round, a little bit of extra scoring before you total up your points. Each round plays out pretty much the same way though. First up, you have to start drafting dice. So first these dice are rolled. All of these ones, red, blue, yellow, the 3 main colours that correspond to these tracks down here, but also greys which can act as wilds. The idea is that once these are all rolled and pulled together, players then take it in turns to choose a die, place it in one of their cool little cradles, and place it on the leftmost space of a particular action. Draw more cards, play more cards, build, move, that kind of thing. But when somebody else comes along and takes a die, if they want to go into the same action space, if they use a die that is lower value than the one that's already there, then it pushes out, with the lower values being on the left-hand side and the higher values being on the right. But for example, if I go there with a 4 or higher in this case, as green, then I have to go over to here. So my action is slightly weaker, but there's some little extra bonuses you can grab, and you know, it is a case that you might want to take those little bonuses rather than have the most powerful action. Once everybody has selected 4 dice and placed them on these action spaces, you then see if you move up these tracks. If your total of your die that you can place into groups of the same colour, remember that greys are wild, total 9 or more, you get to level up these 3 tracks. These tracks basically help you do various things during the game. It allows you to crown more cards, we'll get onto that later. It allows you to get more goods and build more, or gets you more meeples and lets you score more for regions, for example. But then once all the dice are there and present and you've sorted out the tracks, you then take it in turns to starting with your highest die and going down to your lowest to take a die off an action space and do whatever it needs to do. So first up, you've got cards. First up, you can draw these cards. These basically allow you to play them with the cost of money, discounted by having resources. Resources kind of work in a similar fashion to Seven Wonders, where if you have the resource, it's kind of like a permanent one you have. You just have it like as a once available thing. But these cards, when you play them, do special powers. So, you know, lets you crown cards for free, lets you move up tracks, get money, get barbarian tokens, and the like. But once the cards are in front of you, you're able to do something which, as I've been mentioning, is called crowning cards, or sticking them into your palace. And the idea is that underneath your player board, this dual layer board here, if you have a card that you've already played, you can place it underneath your board, and it has a little bonus at the bottom, which means when you retrieve certain dice from certain actions or some other combination, you get more bonuses, and you can just chain these to insane levels with so many bonuses it's kind of unreal. We'll get onto that a little bit later. But you've got actions to draw some of these cards, of which there are 2 different ages. So halfway during the game, you'll swap this deck out for a red deck of more powerful cards and an action for playing them. You can also build, which from your player board, you've got little special pieces like cities and towers and farms and little boats here. And basically, like a lot of these Euros, when you build something, you start from the cheapest, work your way up, and every time you build something, you essentially uncover a bonus or get a bonus underneath. But these other pieces, they give you special bonuses for victory points scoring, they might give you income, they might let you deploy meeples elsewhere, or they could level you up these little shipping tracks which get you more income and various bonuses. Moving meeples is all based around this whole meeple map in the middle. So you'll start off with a city, as well as some meeples on the board, depending on your setup card. And during the game, you'll be able to move these meeples around the regions in order to access different resources, but mainly so you can build more stuff. So I can build a different city over in one other area here. I could build a farm in this area. I could build a tower here where my city is. And it's kind of pseudo area control, but you don't actually kill each other in this. You just share the regions, and it's all about having the majority of meeples in an area rather than actually kicking someone out. If I've got more than you, I'll score more. But if I'm in the region, I still score a bit. It's presence versus domination. And then you've got an action here for wild, which basically lets you access some of the other actions. Once everybody has taken all the actions from their dice, they then gain their income, which is basically gaining money, gaining barbarian tokens, which you use for special actions, and anything else that's got that mystical giving hand symbol that we know from every Euro game in existence. And then you effectively rinse and repeat the board for the next round, and go again 3 more times.
Boy.
So that's a very basic overview of the game. There is a lot more little niche rules to talk about, but I mean, honestly, we'll be here till next Tuesday if we do that. So to get into some of the positives of this game first, this is definitely a thinky game with a lot of combo-tastic potential, and I'd like to use that word every now and again.
You made those words up.
This one is all about creating combos, and a lot of that is done with the card system, which is easily the best thing in this game. You've got these cards which are obviously going to cost a fair bit of money, but require you to get specific resources to discount them, but with their effects that you play, you're obviously going to try and utilize them in such a way that you'll get the bonuses to do other actions. But then I also love the idea that you can place them underneath your board as that crowning action and create some cool combos for when you extract dice. You could just have a bunch of cards that say pretty much any die I take is going to give me something little, or you could try and create your own little powerhouse that basically says every time I take a 5 or a 6 from here, I can get money and barbarian tokens, another card, and allow me to do this, and basically just create the ultimate combo with a particular number. It's entirely up to you. But these cards are a frequent part of the game. You cannot ignore them. In fact, you can't really ignore any sort of aspect in this game, to be honest. But they're easily my favorite part. You get a whole set of unique cards for age 1, which is basically the first 2 rounds, and then in round 3 and 4, you switch to a whole new deck of these red cards, and they're just basically more powerful and more expensive. Now, they are unique, and that doesn't necessarily mean all the effects are necessarily unique. There is a little bit of rinse-repeat in what they do. They just sort of jumble them around a bit, like maybe this bonus will go with this particular power and such. But I also like the flexibility you get with these, because you don't have to play... You play them from your hand, yes, and then when you crown them underneath your palace, great. But what you can also do is not only can you pay extra to play them from a display, a face-up display, but if you don't want to play the card before you crown it, you can simply just deduct the victory point value of your score and then place it underneath straight away. It's like taking a shortcut. You'll still score the cards at the end of the game, but you're effectively just recouping the VP that you lost in the first place, whereas if you play them and then do it the slow way, you'll get more VP as the game ends. But I like that little flexibility, and honestly, if the game was just about these cards, I think it would actually just do pretty well on its own. You know, the card system is good fun, and a solid one at that. I also love this Coimbra dice system. This dice system it's great in that game and it's great here. It requires a lot of planning ahead because it's not enough to just simply take a die and hope it's, you know, one with the tracks. You know, right, I need a 6 red, and if I can get a 3 red, right, I've got 9 there, that levels me up the red track. That's one consideration. But then you've also got to remember, if you want a powerful action, you need to take a low die value, because otherwise you're just going to get pushed along unless you leave it for a bit. Maybe you can wait till later and see whether you actually do need a low die, but then will there be any left? You might be waiting too long. There's always that consideration.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
On top of that, there's whatever actions you want to take in the first place. You do have a while, but perhaps you want to go to a specific one here. And the bonuses are going to be different as well, because some of these, if you line up in the middle, level you up these tracks as well. Well, if your intention is to level up the tracks as quickly as possible, you're going to want to be in the middle of these action spaces. So you're going to need a die that's kind of not too high, not too low. Have fun planning for that one. But then even on top of that, there's also the aspect of turn order, because yes, the turn order in terms of who goes first to take dice just moves around as time goes on. The idea that you have to take from your highest die first is also a thing, because okay, I used a 6 to go over to this action here to play cards. But that means I've got to do that first. But I don't have the cards yet. So maybe I should have had a lower die here and a higher die here so that I draw the cards first and then later on I get to use them. So again, there's a lot of little planning aspects that go into this.
Dear God, what is it like in your funny little brains? It must be so boring.
Now, I know in the past I've given Board and Dice a little bit of grief for not having the best looking games. To be fair, they brought that on themselves.
Your mother.
But lately, they have just been knocking it out of the park with visuals and, you know, cosmetic quality. Windmill Valley, yes, it's a little garish, but it's very bright, it's very colourful, and it's well made. Well, here, no exception. I mean, you wouldn't even believe this was a Board and Dice game when you looked at it. You have got, you know, some decent, if basic dice, but you've got very sturdy cards. I don't think you need to even think about sleeving these, honestly, as much as you might think, well, they get handled a lot, don't they? Honestly, I don't think you need to sleeve them. They're pretty sturdy cardstock. They're not going to scuff anytime soon. But then everybody's got these, you know, screen printed wooden pieces. You've got very chunky cardboard, you know, coins and axes. You've got these really cool wooden, like, you know, almost like, they're a bit like the rewood, I guess, but, you know, these cool little, like, dice cradles that you put the dice in. I mean, it's just a cool thing to take the die, shove it in here, and then place it down. You can clearly see who's what player and such. There's just a lot of neat stuff in here. Not to mention it looks very colourful. Yeah, it's not exactly the most vividly interesting board in the sense of, oh yeah, look at that Easter egg there, or look at that there. I mean, you've got some slightly faded like pictures over here, and then all you're looking at is basically a map of a global area and some people dotted around it. So yeah, it's not necessarily going to win artwork awards, but it looks clean, and that is one thing about this game. You know, the graphic design in this game is done pretty well. A lot of these symbols are kind of intuitive when you look at them, and even then, they're clear. I can see where they are. I don't have to like peer over something or go, hang on, what's that bit over there? To like get an idea of what something is. Everything's kind of visually found on the table, and with no text to be seen, really. You know, all of these are basically just using symbology. It's essentially language independent as well, other than obviously your, you know, your round structure and your reference cards. So yeah, you might have that little problem, but everything else, yeah, there's no text written everywhere, so as long as you're comfortable looking at icons, you're in with a shout.
Making it bigger doesn't make it clearer.
The rulebook is a little hit or miss. I mean, some of it could definitely have been worded better. When I was trying to teach this from the rulebook on my first play, we did struggle a little bit with some aspects. Even though there are a few examples, you know, pictorial representation and that to follow, your first play is probably going to maybe have a couple of questions asked and certainly be a lot longer than the average game. But eventually the rulebook starts to make sense, and it's good that they do put a lot of examples, even if they do also put a lot of text. I mean, there are some pages that are a little bit on the text heavy side, but you do have two very good reference cards to use. One that tells you the round structure and a good amount of detail, one that goes through the whole income and cleanup and how you add cards to your palace, including that VP difference that I mentioned. But this card in particular tells you all the actions and how the buildings and that work, you know, nicely done. And the all-important extra actions. I have never seen a game flaunt bonus actions as much as this one, and I cannot stress this enough. It says extra actions once per turn each, and this is basically where you mostly get to trade in these barbarian tokens to do things like get extra resources based on your map location and the like. It says here important. These actions are an important part of the game. Using them from the very beginning of the game is highly recommended. Oh god, I cannot stress that enough. Seriously, wow. You need to be doing these extra actions pretty much every one of your turns. You should be doing an extra action. They are not just important, they are paramount.
Everybody got that?
The game comes with a solo mode, again co-designed with David Turksey, and yeah, David Turksey I give a little bit of flack for creating monstrous flowcharts of complicated solo modes. I swear, this is actually one of the simplest solo modes I've seen him do. I mean, let's ignore On the Underground, because that's a somewhat different deal. But for a Euro game of this caliber, and particularly from Board and Dice, this is one of the easiest solo modes I've ever had to deal with. I mean, literally, it just requires the use of a small deck of cards and a few pieces of the opponent. That's kind of it. You just basically flip a card, it tells you what dice to draft in what order and what type of die, very easy iconography. The vase is only needed for the end of the round, and then the action priority is done by the order of the symbols on the top of the deck. That's pretty much all the AI is. Now, granted, the AI does various things on the actions, but you've got a reference card for it, so I found that once I'd absorbed the rulebook once, I didn't really have to go back to the rulebook for that many things. A lot of it was on the reference card itself, so it enables you to play the solo mode with a relative amount of smoothness.
Barely an inconvenience.
Paths to victory are a little bit limited in this game. Now, I said you can create a lot of cool combos with these cards. That is still a thing, but the combos are mainly just a means to an end. I mean, they let you move meeples, they let you get more cards, they let you, get extra resources. They are basically what you're doing in the game normally, they just let you do it better. But in terms of what you actually get points for, like how do you actually win this game properly, there's really only two ways to do it. You crown a bunch of cards, and I mean a lot of cards, if you're going to focus on that. But then that in itself, as much as that is the most fun way to play the game, it's subpar when compared to the main way this game wants you to play it, which is the map. Unfortunately, the map is the weakest element of the game. It's just boring, because all this map is basically presence. You don't fight each other on this map, so you can't kick anybody out of an area you're in, at all.
You win without a fight.
Without shooting? You can't do that. Hey, you can't do that!
Frankly, this game has next to no player interaction whatsoever, other than the idea that you're blocking spaces on here and sharing presence and domination here. Other than that, whatever. It's literally just they're there to take stuff you might have wanted, like most Euros. But all you do here is just basically go, right, I move this guy to here. Is there a farm there? No, I could build a farm there. No one's built a city there. Fine, I could build my city there and get a little bonus off the tiles that are on there. Fine, I could battle one of the sea people, which is like another tile, which is just basically, take these and convert them into a bonus. But the region scoring for this map thing is stupidly powerful. If you ignore it, then you're going to lose this game. You cannot win this game by doing nothing but crown cards and ignore this region scoring. It's physically impossible. Now, granted, turn that on its flip side, you can't ignore the cards entirely, but you can do bare bones of the cards and focus mostly on this and still do pretty damn well, if not still win. But the region scoring can score you ridiculous amounts of points, because all you have to do to begin with is be in an area. Doesn't matter if you are majority or not, you'll still get a point. But you'll get 3 points if you have more meeples than anybody else in the area, which you should be able to do at least a couple of times anyway. But that's just the basic amount you score. Level up this blue track down here, and that suddenly creates to 4 points for a particular region, like presence, or 6 points for dominance. That is insane. There's a lot of regions on this board here, and that can go up if you build towers. You can actually up the VP value of those by 2 each if you build all your towers, which again, is not that difficult. Just go around and build cities and then build the towers. No one can stop you other than building one of those pieces in an area, but there's enough areas for you to do it with. Just focus on it and you'll do it pretty easily. But the amount of points that you can score from this. I mean, if you crown a card, you can get 3, 4, 6 points, you know, per card, but the effort you have to go through, you need all the coins, you need to be able to play the card, and then you need to be able to crown it under your palace, you know, because if you take the shortcut, you're losing out on those points, so what was the deal with it anyway? But you get to the end of round 2 and the end of round 4 when you do the region scoring, and suddenly this guy here on 14 points suddenly catapults all the way to like 60, just because they gain such a stupid amount of points from region scoring. It dominates. If someone focuses hard on region scoring, they win. That's how I've seen people win most of these games. Now, when people have not managed to do as well on the region scoring, then somebody who focuses on the crowning cards can just about beat them. But the card points just don't ever measure up to the region scoring that much. As I say, not to say that cards can't do well, and not to say that you can't beat somebody who does a lot of region scoring if you do a lot of cards, but you know, you're fighting an uphill battle if you do it that way. Whereas when I've won the game by doing the region scoring, it kind of just feels like easy mode.
What is your favorite color? Blue. No.
And in any case, 2 paths to victory, basically just regions and cards, and that's it. Every game plays out pretty much the same. There isn't really a sense of variety when you play each game. Yes, you've got these cards that are technically unique, but it's only unique in the sense that, oh, you know, this bonus gives me a barbarian token, this bonus gives you money instead, this one gives me a good, this one lets me move a meeple. These are cool cards. Yes, I do like these, but these don't fundamentally change the way the game plays out. The game's still going to play out in pretty much the same fashion each time. But you can spice up the game a little bit with these special ability tiles. Each player has one to start the game with, and they can level it up with the yellow track. Although, to be honest, compared to the blue and red track, the blue one focuses on region scoring and meeples, the red one focuses on getting cards and crowning and money. Those 2 tracks are miles better than the yellow one. The yellow one gets you a couple of goods, a couple of free builds, whoop-de-doo, but mainly it lets you level up your special ability to make it more powerful. But the effort that you take to do that rarely pays off dividends compared to just leveling up the other 2. And these abilities are decent. I'm not sure I would necessarily call them like fundamentally well balanced in some respects, but you know, they are at least cool to have. Although I don't think you really need to spend ages leveling them up to the top level. Maybe you might do it in the late game, but then if you only get one use of the top level of your special ability for one round, it doesn't really seem like that big a deal. You know, you might as well just be better off just keeping it on the bottom level, maybe getting it to the middle one, but rarely do I actually feel like I've earned enough from it by leveling it up to the top effect like really quickly.
Is that it?
I talked about the solo mode being quite smooth to play and certainly being quite easy to learn. That's definitely good sides. The bad sides of the solo modes are twofold. Firstly, there's a very cheaty AI. It's an AI that basically spams the region map with meeples, and I mean spam. Like in the first round, the AI potentially covers all the regions on the board. I mean, yeah, you know, every single region can have a AI meeple in it, if not multiple. They just flood the regions with too many of them, which means that when it comes to the region scoring, if you're not focusing pretty hard on region scoring in a solo game, you're just going to get creamed on those points. But the AI just gets points for doing nothing. It's like, oh, was there die on the middle of a section of the action track? Well, instead of leveling up a track because they don't do that, they just get 5 points. Well, all that for 5 points? I mean, I'll take the 5 points rather than a level up on there, thank you very much. But then a lot of other stuff that they do is just basically get points or get stuff built for free, nice and easy. And it just feels very cheaty. You know, and all through the game, you are going to be behind the AI.
Listen, you just gotta give me more time.
You're not going to overtake it. It's fundamentally impossible. So if you are going to beat the AI, you have to do it in endgame scoring. It's the only way it is. But it's kind of frustrating and demeaning to have the AI constantly ahead of you in points throughout the whole game, making you feel like anything you do is kind of worthless, because it's like, oh, that took a lot of effort, but you know what? That got me a good 11 points. I'm happy with that. And then the AI comes around and goes, right, gets 5 for that, and gets 10 for that, and then done, 15 for nothing. It's like, oh, right, well, that was great. And it just feels a little bit like a bit of a downer. But also, the other thing with it is that, oh my god, the difficulty rating of this thing. You can play this on easy, normal, or hard, right? Play this on easy. Play this on easy and you should win half of the games, if not slightly more. And you'll still have a good time. But the medium setting, normal, whoo-wee. I mean, if you beat this AI on normal, you're not beating it by much. You know, the first time I actually did beat the AI, I only did it by like a point. You know, it really was tight. But hard mode? That's like the equivalent of playing Ghost Stories on hard, or just playing the White Castle. Remember that one from Devir Games? Hard mode is damn near friggin' impossible. There is no way I'm playing this solo AI on hard anymore. It's not happening. But even on normal, it's quite a tricky one. You know, this is not one that you're going to beat on a regular basis unless you spend ages mapping out all the different types of, well, hang on, if the AI goes to that space and then I'm going to get that many points from that many cards, but then if I go there, I could switch it around and carry the one. It's like, if you're playing it to that extent, then play some other game, you know, because that does not feel like fun. But it's very difficult to know, you know, how to stop the AI anyway, because you need to do what you need to do. If you spend ages trying to manipulate the dice with, you know, how the AI works, it's just going to hamper you too much. Not to mention that the dice actions that they pick are random. If you play against an opponent, you know that you can kind of gauge, right, well, I reckon you want cards, so I'm going to expect you to go here. The AI is entirely random. What dice they choose, what value they are, what action they pick, entirely random based on the cards. So you can't predict anything that the AI is going to do because it's, like I say, a random fest.
Wait, my cheating unit malfunctioned.
But let's get to the big elephant in the room, and yes, I know I sound like a broken record when I talk about this. Certainly some fans and a couple of trolls have, you know, made this clear, but it's important. And in this game, it is a biggie on the floor list, the time length. Most publishers lie about the time length for their games. In credit, this one's not far off, but it still says 90 to 150 on the box. This is easily 120 to 210. This game can go on to ridiculous lengths with a lot of players. If you play this in 90 minutes solo, A, you are not including the setup or teach, but you are playing at lightning speed.
How's this look? Okay, that's good.
But if you think you can play this in 150 minutes with 4 players, bear in mind that's not even including setup, takedown, or teach, because I mean, takedown takes a while, the setup takes a while, because you've got lots of little bits to do, and lots of take this out, remove these from the game, put these ones back in, etc. But the teach is not exactly a short one either. You honestly believe you can do it in 2.5 hours? You have powers over time that would rival the Time Lords of Gallifrey.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
This is not a thing that you can do on a regular basis. Even 90 minutes for the solo mode, as I said, is lightning speed. It's probably going to take you longer than that. This game has a time length factor that is exponential when you add more players. I actively do not want to play this with 4 ever again. I will outright ban 4 players of this. It takes forever. When you have got the dice, like 16 odd dice, and you're looking at these and trying to decide, well, which die do I want? Where do I want to put it? What are the other players likely to do? What order am I going to do my actions in? What order am I going to take them off here and stuff? What tracks do I want to level up? It creates a moronic amount of AP, but it also means that the downtime is insane because you're thinking about what you can do, but all it takes is for somebody to go to the spot you want, and suddenly you've got to rethink everything you do again. But it takes forever to get through the dice phase because all the AP and all the planning and such. But then resolving the actions is not a short time because you might think, well, what's so hard about drawing a bunch of cards or playing a bunch of cards? Now, certain ones like just drawing cards are not long actions, but playing cards, you can trigger off a lot of bonuses by playing cards, not to mention some of them let you play more cards, but then you've got all the different things that you can build and all the stuff that you can, move around the map, and retrieving dice also triggers off all the bonuses on your cards. And if you've got one of these setups with a bunch of crown cards that create a bucket load of combos every time you take a dive anywhere, the amount of stuff you trigger plus the actions you're doing, man, this creates so much downtime, and in 4 players it is unbearable.
You're those ones there! The ones next to you! Now make your move!
It's just way too much for what this game is. And this game is not a light game. Anybody who calls this a light or medium game is off their rocker. This is a heavy game. There's a lot to deal with in here. And even though it doesn't give off the aesthetics of a heavy game, and it kind of fools you into thinking it's going to be light, when in fact it really isn't. But man, does 4 rounds seem to take a long time. In fact, this game probably should only be 3 rounds, because that might actually bring the game down by a good hour time length. It gets ridiculous when you get into rounds 3 and 4. Rounds 1 and 2 are still pretty long. It snowballs into 3 and 4. But, God, I mean, 4 players, way too long. 3 players, still pretty long. Normally I say 3 players is the optimum player count. Honestly, I think the optimal player count for this is 1. You know, actually, nah, probably 2. I'd say 2's the best count for this, because the solo mode, like I say, has a very cheaty AI. It's just very random. You can't predict anything with it. At least with a 2-player game, you get to kind of gauge the opponent and what they're going to do. The board has overlays for 2 players, so you have less action spaces, so it's still relatively tight with the action selection, and you have a different shape map, and you've got an overlay, so again, you have a little bit of, you know, tightness with the map, but again, you don't kick anyone out or block anyone, so what does it matter? You just walk over anywhere and just help yourself.
God's sake, why is it we can't learn to live together? You're right, Norman.
So it is a decent game in a lot of respects, but the flaws in this one hurt a lot more. And I know I've given high ratings to games where I've given flaws. You know, no game is ever perfect. It's a case of how much do those flaws affect my enjoyment of the game. The flaws in this one affect me a lot. They're big flaws. They are noticeable every single time, and you can never avoid them or just gloss over them. You know, the most fun I have with this is playing it solo if I'm willing to put up with a cheaty AI and just play it on easy difficulty, or 2 players. But I don't often get big heavy games like this to the table 2 players. And if I'm going to do a heavy game that's a 2-player game, I'd probably rather just load up Through the Ages on my phone or something, or play a game of Ark Nova or something like that. There's not a lot of games here that and Star Wars Rebellion, I guess that counts. But most heavy games, and Fields of All, okay, there's a few 2-player ones that I have. But the thing is, all of those I'd rather play than this one. And to play this at 3 or 4, I'm going to be very reluctant, if pretty much never. In fact, definitely never with 4. So this doesn't have a wide range of player counts for me either. It's, I say, a lot of stuff I do like. I just wish I could recommend it to everybody. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 overall. It's above average. It's got good production quality, some good mechanics, some good card combo-tastic, a decent smooth solo mode if you don't mind the sort of like cheatiness of it. But man, the lack of variety in the path to victory, the lack of, you know, like variance in how the game plays out, the focus on region scoring being a very weak aspect of the game, a very dull aspect, and just the fact that the game takes like about 5 ice ages to play at any count above 2 is just majorly off-putting. It really kind of just needed some trimming of the fat. There's some little things like having a, you know, a different bonus for this spot when you go to a couple of action spaces on here, and it's just like, trim the fat, get stuff like that out of your game. But you could definitely have trimmed a few things here, trimmed the fat, made it more streamlined, definitely cut a round out of the game or make the round shorter, maybe only have 3 actions, not 4 actions. That way that takes a bit of length off the game. I don't know, but it feels like they tried to pile in everything in the kitchen sink in terms of like, oh, little bits of mechanics here and there, and didn't then stop to think of just how much of a behemoth they've made. Trim the fat, streamline a game, always turns out for the better. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Share it out on social media and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you love this game? Do you not mind the time length? Are you one of these people that know to bend the laws of time and can play a 4-player game in 90 minutes? By all means, you know, be civil and let me know your thoughts. Of course, check out the rest of the Essen content I've been doing. There's some belters, there's some misses, but there's certainly plenty of content that's been done and more to come before I go away on my little holiday this year. So take care, and remember, regardless if you want to share your areas with anybody else in perfect living harmony, it's still only a game, just a bloody long one. Take care, and bye for now.